Business news now, and the World Bank is looking for a new boss after President David Malpass announced that he's stepping down. Appointed by former US President Donald Trump, Mr. Malpass was always a controversial choice, as he had expressed skepticism over the role of multilateral institutions, and he found himself in hot water late last year after failing to answer questions about man-made climate change. For more on this story and some of the other business news of the day, let's cross over to London to speak to Arise business correspondent Laurie Laird. Good to see you, Laurie. So David Malpass, to some extent, was always a surprising choice as World Bank president. But why is he so controversial?
Absolutely. And I think anyone nominated to the head of a multilateral institution by Donald Trump was always going to face a degree of skepticism. And David Malpass didn't help himself. He had criticized multilateral institutions on a number of occasions when he was at the Treasury Department, raised questions over the effectiveness of multilateral lending. So yes, always a controversial choice. Got himself into quite a bit of hot water last September at a climate conference sponsored by the New York Times. And unfortunately, it's proprietary video, so I can't show it to you. But he was pressed on man-made climate change and what that's doing to man-made emissions, what that is doing to climate change, how that's contributing to global warming. He deflected that question a number of times before finally saying, look, I don't know, and I'm not a scientist. That did not endear him to many people, particularly the legions of activists of climate change people. So his days were always a little bit numbered after that. But I think most recently there have been some questions about whether he has lost the support of the U.S., which is the biggest contributor to the World Bank and certainly has the biggest vote when it comes to policy at the World Bank. Janet Yellen, the Treasury Secretary, has spoken about the World Bank quite a few times over the past couple of weeks. And that's unusual. You don't tend to see U.S. government figures getting involved, speaking about multilateral institutions, unless we're looking at nominating someone to lead them. Janet Yellen has said quite a few times that she would like to see the World Bank reformed, like to see that happen very quickly. She wants a much quicker assessment of climate change, the effect of climate change in developing markets. And she wants to see the World Bank free up some funds to make sure that more of those funds are going to the developing world. So it doesn't seem that Malpass even had the confidence of Janet Yellen of the US toward the end.
So, I mean, in light of that, I mean, how will his tenure be viewed? What will his World Bank legacy be?
It probably won't be viewed as well as it should be. Certainly, since he has been there in 2019, the amount of lending that the World Bank is doing has doubled to 115 billion US dollars, and the amount devoted to climate change has also doubled to about $32 billion. So despite the controversy around David Malpass, his record in at least getting money out the door has been pretty good.
So, I mean, how will a new president of the World Bank be chosen?
I think this is a discussion that we'll have over the next couple of weeks, Charles, because whenever there is an opening at the IMF or the World Bank, there are always discussions, as there should be, about the way that these positions are, or the people to fill these positions are chosen. The World Bank historically has always been chosen by the Americans. The head has always been chosen by the Americans and has always been an American. For the International Monetary Fund, the leader has always been chosen by Europe and has always been a European. A lot of people think that since the IMF and the World Bank are operating mostly in the developing economies, that there should be more developing economy input. Perhaps it's time to break that oligopoly at the top of these institutions and get leaders from the developing world to lead these institutions. And I'm sure we'll have this debate as we discuss a replacement for David Malpass. And I think it's a debate that we should have.
Well, let's turn to the UK where you are, Laurie. It's been suggested that it's the slowest growing big economy, but its share index has hit a string of record highs and one particular share standing out today.
Absolutely. Look, usually we discuss the UK, we discuss high inflation, double digit inflation, we discuss slowing growth, the possibility of a recession next year. And yet, the FTSE 100, which is the main benchmark, equity benchmark in the UK, has hit a number of record highs in a row. We closed today at just over 8,000, highest since 1984 when this index first started trading. The reason for this, though, is that the FTSE 100 is chock full of energy-oriented stocks. BP, Shell. We've talked about these oil companies and their outsized profits over the past couple of quarters, largely because of that run-up in oil prices after the war in during the war in Ukraine. Today, the standout stock, as you said, is called Centrica. It's the owner of British Gas, and they've done very, very well out of selling gas, getting gas out of the ground. Centrica both produces gas and distributes it. Their profits were outstanding, almost triple what they were last year, 3.3 billion pounds. And that's one of the big shares in the FTSE 100. And that's why this index has done so well.
But I mean, British Gas that you talked about has been harshly criticized in recent weeks, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has been on the naughty step. It's made some pretty big mistakes. And this relates to putting prepay energy meters into people's homes. And these meters go into people's home, usually people who are on lower incomes, to make sure that they pay before they use energy so that the energy provider isn't left out of pocket in the case of non-payment. British Gas, again, a subsidiary of Centrica, has actually forced agents of British Gas have forced their way into people's homes to fit these meters. They've been banned by doing so going forward, but it really was a very messy situation for Centrica and one that hasn't quite been resolved yet.
Okay, Laurie, thanks very much indeed. Laurie Laird, our ICE business correspondent, talking to me there from London.